Hey, I'm back. This is Chandler for Melda Production, and today I'm going to be going over mixing in MDrummer, specifically how to use the parallel processing and some of the other new features. I haven't done a MDrummer video in a while, and before, I don't think it actually had some of these features, so I'm going to go through these and show you how you can do this. Someone asked me how you could do parallel processing inside MDrummer, and I'm going to show you how to do that now. So I just have a dry kit. I just use this first one here. I'll let you hear what this sounds like. So as you can hear, it's a fairly dry kit. It has all the different velocity layers, and it has room mics, overheads, etc. But let's get into how to mix it. So if we go into the mixer here, you see everything here. I don't want to go over all the very basic stuff, but here you can add the effects and everything. These control the amount of send, you have the pitch, you can control how much is going into the overheads or into the various rooms, etc. here. So what we want to do is we want to group these and use these sends here. So you see we have overheads, room 1, room 2, and then we have 2 sends we can use here. Now, one of the things that might be a problem is if we look here, all of these are going to go out directly to the master channel here. And of course, we want everything going out of the master because we're only using MDrummer 1 out. But what we want to do is we want to kind of separate these in a way so it'll be easier for us to use. And that is so they're going out of bass drum, snare drum, toms are all grouped together. And the reason for that is you see here we have 3 different snare drum articulations just for snare drum 1, 3 for snare drum 2, etc. And I don't want to put the same effects on each one. I want to group all these together and then just process this. And an easy way to do that is by changing these outputs. So I could go in here and say okay, bass drum, these are going to be 1. Snare drum, these are all going to be 2. Snare drum 2, these are all going to be 3. But of course, this takes forever. You probably don't want to do this, right? So these are all at 1 by default when you open it. If we go into the drum set editor here, look in advanced, and it says default output channels. So as you saw before, everything is 1. If we go into here, default output channels, that's going to group everything together for us in the default way, I guess. So here, default output channels, just click it. Boom. Now we go into our mixer and everything's going out. So all our bass drums are 1, our snare drum is 2, the second snare drum is 3, all our toms are 4, etc. And that's going to help us and make everything much easier. Let me play something so you can see they're all going out the correct place. So you can see everything's going out here, the bass drum's going out here, the snare's going out here, as opposed to everything just going straight out of our master here, which is what we don't want. Another thing that I believe is somewhat new and it's very helpful is if I want to reduce the sound of both bass drums. So let's say I'm using both bass drums, maybe this one's for the verse, this one's for the chorus, but they're both too loud. Now, of course, I can just bring them both down, or especially with the toms, all my toms are way too loud. I want to bring all of these down, but I don't want to do it manually. If we use this batch modify, just click on it. And what it's going to do is it's going to allow us to adjust many parameters at the same time, especially things like snare drums where you have 4 drums, but they're basically supposed to be the same thing, even though they're all different samples. I don't want to have to adjust every single one of these manually. So what I can do, for the volume here, is if you look here at the snare drums, if I bring this down, they all go down together. But it's not only that, the amount of send also moves. I can adjust the pitch of all of them if I want. The close mic volume, the overhead volume, the room volume, etc. And I can adjust the pan of all of them at the same time. So this will save you a lot of time and energy. So if you think okay, all my toms are, just too loud. Oh, another thing, if you don't want to move all the way over this time, we can just click here and it makes all of them small. So that way we can see our tom drums here and we can lower these by a certain amount just so everything's more balanced. And then if you're actually I want to move one of these down, further, we can do it that way. Or another way is if you think you know what? This one, tom 2 needs to be brought down, but this volume from all my toms may not be right, so I don't want to adjust things manually, because if I do this and like bring this down and then I start moving this again, you see it jumps up. I don't want that. You can just go into the drum set editor and I can go to tom 2 here, and you see it has output volume. That's what we're adjusting the mixer, but it also has this volume, which I can adjust there. So if I think like, the ratio is good, I want to bring that down a little bit, I can adjust it here, and that way when I move the ratio here, the batch moving, it didn't move my actual volume. It just moved the output volume. So that way you're still going to get the same ratio. So that's a little trick there if you're wondering how to do that if you run into that type of problem. So the batch modify can be very useful. And if I don't want to see it anymore, just click here, batch modify, it's gone. But now let's get into some of the other stuff. I'm sure you want to know like the processing. Here, if I want to process the two bass drums together, I can just add effects here. Same with the snare, etc., etc. Let's move that bass and snare back out here so we can see it. Now, what I might want to do is let's send some of these to a reverb. So we're going to use a send here. Let's use the first one, and let's add a reverb here. Maybe charm verb. This seems good. Let's go to drum set. There we go. I'll just choose one. I don't know what this sounds like yet, so I'm just going to put this at 100%. And something I can do here is let's bring some of these over. Let's increase this. And because I don't want to do every single snare drum, let's go into the batch modify. Let's bring send one up here. Okay. I'll make this small again. Now, let's listen to it. Now, you'll notice this sometimes, like, hey, it doesn't seem very loud, it's hard to hear this, and you see the levels low. One reason is this is sometimes pre-send, so sometimes I want to do sends post-fader like this, and this will make it louder. Also, I can bring this level up if it's just really too low, like this. And that's sounding pretty good. And I can do the same thing with something else if I want to add, maybe a little bit to the bass drum. To be honest, I probably wouldn't, but if I wanted to, I could. And so there is an easy way to have your send and send things over there. The other thing I'm sure what people are asking about is like parallel compression, and that I'll do the same thing with 2. All I'm going to do here is go into here. I'll use MDrummer strip since I showed that before, and I imagine that's what people are asking about. I have drum strip here in special, and we'll go to parallel here. Let me just turn everything off. I might want to make it larger just so I can see what the levels are doing, and I probably want to solo this also, but unfortunately this probably won't solo everything, so I want to mute the close mics. Actually, let me show you what this does. Muting close mics and overhead mics. This is a really easy way so you can just hear what the close mics or overheads are doing, like this. So I'm just going to leave it like that for this, where I mute the overhead and rooms. And let me just solo this. And let's choose something to go over there. We can do the batch modify again. And let's add to send 2 here. Maybe 6. And let's move this all the way up to 0, which might be a lot. And now we're going to go into here. I have it soloed here. And also have mute overheads and everything. So now, move this down. We're going to use the auto input, actually, not in there. I need to make sure I turn a sound on, and then we're going to use the auto input, and we're going to mess with the compression, some of the saturation, and even out the levels. So I'm getting lots of smack out of that. And we're going to use that and just add that in for power. So what I'm going to do is unmute this. I'm going to bring it down and I'm just going to add it in. I can either do it with the overheads and room mics muted, or I can turn it on like this. So I'm just going to turn the rhythm editor. I'm going to play something and I'm just going to turn it up until it sounds good to me. And there you go. That's how you can do it. You can also mess with the rooms here. So if I thought like, okay, I want more of a room sound, I think almost all of these are already going into the room here. So if I just mute the close mics, solo, actually room 1 here, and we can use like MDrum strip on this too if we want. Just MDrum strip and set it to room. Turn these things off at first. And we can mix a room sound in here if we want a bigger sound like this. Now let's hear that with everything on and see if it makes it sound bigger, hopefully. Now, today I didn't do a full mixing job on this, but I just gave you an idea of what you can do, especially using this batch modify and these sends here. So you can do parallel processing if you want to do, parallel compression. You can do it just like I showed here using MDrum strip or just drum strip in here. But also, as you see here, there's lots of other things for dynamics here. You have companders, compressors. I don't know if you'd want to use a drum leveler for that, but you have dynamics MB, you have limiters, you have compressors, you have transient designers, you have M turbo comp in here, and you have distortions also. So you can kind of make your own chain here if this isn't exactly what you want. Maybe an MDrum strip, you think like, what, I actually kind of want to do some EQ. You can use the EQ here, or if you want to do some weird distortion and really distort it, you have all the tools in there to help you do that. Also, I like to use one of these just as a reverb bus, and you can use the sends to put as much or as little into that as you want. And as you can see, there's more than one reverb and delay as well. There's lots of things you can use in here to get the exact sound you want. But hopefully this explained to you how to use these sends and how to route everything inside MDrummer. I know sometimes it's easier to use the MDrummer 16 out, but it takes lots of space in your DAW, and you really can do everything inside of MDrummer if you want to. And if you want to put some finishing touches, just put some effects on the end of your master. So if you have any questions about this, leave them down below. Be sure to give me a thumbs up and check out all the other plugins at melderproduction.com. Till next time, see you.